Venezuela's prisons are no longer ruled by the state, they are ruled by the inmates themselves. Behind towering concrete walls, power has shifted into the hands of heavily armed prisoners who possess assault rifles, pistols, and even grenades. These prisons function under the command of ruthless criminal gangs, led by feared figures known as prains, modern-day kingpins, who enforce their own laws with absolute brutality. Disobedience is not corrected with warnings or isolation. It is punished with bullets fired into limbs as public reminders. The situation is so dangerous that even the military refuses to enter. Soldiers stand guard only on the outside, weapons raised, watching for escape attempts but never daring to cross the threshold. Inside, the prisoners have built a self-contained society, an underground world with its own rules, economy, and hierarchy. Within these walls exists a surreal marketplace where anything can be bought or sold. Coca-Cola sits openly beside cocaine. Families visit several days a week, celebrating birthdays and festivals inside the prison itself, as if the walls no longer separate freedom from captivity. This disturbing reality is laid bare in La Causa, a documentary by 29-year-old filmmaker Andrés Figueredo Thompson, who captured the full scope of this hidden world. His camera reveals how inmates created a parallel society where anyone considered different, dangerous, or disobedient faces merciless punishment. LGBTQ prisoners were segregated by gangs and confined to rooftops, stripped of protection. Thompson first entered these prisons in 2010, camera in hand, during a time when President Hugo Chavez was dismantling state institutions and seizing private property across the country. The year before, Thompson's stepfather had been labeled a traitor by the government, forcing the family to flee Venezuela. Thompson returned again and again over 8 years to document the truth. His first experience inside was horrifying. Prisoners roamed freely with heavy weapons. Human waste stripped down walls. The air was thick with rot and decay. But what haunted him most was seeing small children walk through these gates every day, watching drugs being sold openly, even witnessing mothers holding infants while dealing narcotics. Thompson's journey deepened when he learned the story of a former kingpin turned politician, and at just 17 years old, using fake identification, he stepped into this lethal world. Slowly, he earned the trust of the inmates, who wanted the world to see their darkness, their rules, their twisted sense of order. Once, these prisons were ruled by pure chaos, constant massacres and bloodshed, but after new prains seized power, violence became controlled, calculated, and ritualistic. It was violence with structure, eye for an eye. Strangely, in this criminal hellscape, personal belongings were safe. A lost phone or wallet would always be returned, because if it wasn't, someone would be held accountable. Fear enforced honesty. This system of terror created a rigid, unspoken stability. The prison had its own government, its own security forces, its own laws. Armed guards patrolled internally, deciding who could go where, how to behave, even which words were forbidden. A single mistake could destroy one's social standing. New prisoners were first sent to the church, where they were interrogated, who they were, why they were there, and who they knew inside. Then came classification into 3 groups. Dagra inmates lived with the most freedom, roaming, shirtless, consuming drugs, living unchecked. Evangelicals lived under strict discipline, carrying Bibles, wearing ties, maintaining cleanliness, cooking, and cleaning the filth of the prison. At the bottom were the renegade, those guilty of the most serious crimes, LGBTQ inmates, or enemies of the ruling gangs. For them, survival was unlikely. The church served both as sanctuary and punishment chamber. Those who broke rules or failed to repay debts were sent there first. If they failed again, bullets shattered their hands or worse. They were sent to renegade, a place from which no one ever returned. These scars became permanent marks, silent proof of what happens when rules are broken. Inside Venezuela's inmate-controlled prisons, the prison government collects a mandatory tax from everyone, known as la Causa. This money is used to bring supplies from the outside world. As long as prisoners follow the rules and pay la Causa on time, life continues without immediate danger. But the moment someone causes trouble or falls into debt, the situation turns brutally unforgiving. During the years of extreme hyperinflation, outside currency lost all value inside these walls. Money became meaningless. In response, prisoners created their own economic system, new currencies, barter trades, debt chains, and underground markets. While basic food and necessities disappeared from ordinary Venezuelan cities, they were still available inside the prison. In fact, civilians often entered the prison just to shop or eat at in-matron restaurants, which served better food than the state ever provided. Government meals were rotten, disease spreading, and barely edible, while prison restaurants thrived like dark businesses inside a forbidden city. Yet within this twisted order, death quietly waited in every corner. One dying prisoner, reduced almost to a skeleton by tuberculosis, appeared on cameraman who had spent years behind bars over nothing more than the theft of a wristwatch. He died one day before his release. Most inmates inside these prisons had never received a formal sentence at all. Trapped in legal limbo, they waited for years without trial. Some eventually confessed to crimes they didn't commit, simply to move the judicial process forward. As economic collapse worsened and government policies tightened, even minor offenses sent ordinary people to prison. Teenagers were locked in the same hellish environment as hardened murderers. To survive, inmates were forced to join criminal networks, find work inside, and pay la Causa regularly. When society offers no path to rehabilitation, this filthy underground world sinks deeper into darkness, breeding new criminals instead of reforming them. By the end of the documentary, the story reaches its most explosive turning point. In 2016, the Venezuelan military launched a massive operation to retake control of these armed prisons. The very prison filmed over 8 years became the epicenter of violent confrontation. Reclaiming weapon-filled prisons posed a massive crisis for Venezuela's socialist government because such operations inevitably meant bloodshed. Innocent detainees, people still awaiting trial, were killed in the crossfire. This reality directly contradicted the government's own ideology of compassion, justice, and the creation of a new human being. According to the revolutionary ideals inspired by Che Guevara, prisons were meant to be places of re-education, not execution grounds. So how could the state justify mass killings in the name of order? This contradiction became one of the most haunting questions left unanswered. For Andres Figueiredo Thompson, the collapse of Venezuela's authoritarian system was not just political, it was deeply personal. His stepfather, Guillermo Zuluaga, owned one of the country's last independent television networks. As Hugo Chavez seized control of most media outlets, Zuluaga faced years of harassment, threats, and pressure for speaking the truth. In Arling y Ling, Chavez had him arrested and declared an enemy of the revolution, forcing him into exile. Thompson was only a first-year university student then. While his family fled the country, he stayed behind in Venezuela with his younger brother alone. Watching a man he admired for his honesty being punished simply for telling the truth was a life-altering experience. When a society loses the ability to question power, when mistakes cannot be corrected, ideology becomes a prison of its own, and eventually, there is no way back. La Causa captures this slow collapse in devastating detail. Under Chavez and Maduro, the film exposes human rights violations, social decay, and the gradual destruction of revolutionary promises. Yet within this darkness, it also shows fragile human stories, people still struggling to change, still hoping for freedom, even as justice remains uncertain. Thompson's journey taught him that entering the depths of such horror opens another door to humanity. Not everyone can step inside the belly of the beast, but when these realities are shown through film, people begin to understand, to feel, and to empathize. That is the true power of cinema. These Venezuelan prisons are not symbols of pride. They are mirrors, reflecting a nation's collapse, a society's moral decay. And the final question remains, is this armed prison world only Venezuela's problem, or a warning of what the future might hold for all of us? If prisons themselves become symbols of injustice, then how safe is the rest of society?